all along the camp. There's very little chances that you'll interact with the other camps, which is a lot of fun too. Yeah, that's just kind of how our layout is we've got our outpost campsite, our wilderness campsite, and our main campsite.
Aper says the volunteers often come with the dean of the camp for a week, but they have a host of volunteers that help make each week of camp move smoothly. He points anyone interested in the upcoming summer of camping to visit littlegalilee.com. You can also follow them on Facebook and Instagram. Piatt County Sheriff Mark Vogelzang took over for the retired Dave Hunt mid-year in 2021 and recently discussed the direction for his department under his leadership. The sheriff is a veteran of law enforcement, recently retired from the Champaign Police Force to join the Piatt County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Vogelzang hopes to be proactive in building relationships with the communities they serve and emphasize the importance of that approach.
Building those relationships with, whether it's the community, the schools, spending time in the schools, working with a lot of the other agencies within our county. Being a smaller county, we've got a lot of rural fire districts. Our medical, the Kirby ambulance is phenomenal. And there's some smaller police agencies that we're really trying to work with, probation, working in the schools with the violence prevention. And, being a lot of these agencies are much smaller, so trying to work with them and partner with them in training and equipment, things like that.
The sheriff explains one difference between his time in Champaign County and Piatt County will be response time. Piatt County is a very long north to south area. He notes they do have limited law enforcement presence in some areas and provide that presence for others.
You mentioned how big the county is, and that's probably one of my biggest changes that I saw from Champaign, going from a response time of potentially minutes to a response time of 20 or 25 minutes if you're going to the other end of the county. But yes, currently we do contract with Cerro Gordo for police services. Bement did have an officer that they're looking to fill a position there, and then Mansfield has an officer as well. Trying to work with them, and when you're a department of one or two, it's hard to get that training in. So we're going to start trying to invite them into our, whether it be firearms training or working with medical training for AEDs or, applying tourniquets and those initial responses.
In his mission to connect with the community, oftentimes interaction with law enforcement for most people comes at a very low point in their lives or during an unexpected circumstance. He says it's important to make sure that even in those interactions, things remain positive.
It's one of those that I don't think the community or the public sees it a lot. And, even as an administrator, there's a lot of things that I don't see that the deputies, the officers that are doing, because they're one-on-one with somebody that's going through a traumatic event, whether it's a loved one that just passed or a burglary at Christmas time or something like that. And the officers and the deputies are doing some amazing things, such as, providing food to them. They'll run to a local restaurant and get some food because the person's going through a traumatic event, or going to that burglary scene where they decide to pull some funds and buy a family gift card. So a lot of those little things really mean a lot to the officers and deputies as they try and help out their community.
Sheriff Vogelzang says a lot of those positive interactions oftentimes start in the schools, but the sheriff also points to the quality of life issues in smaller communities where those residents have concerns and doing everything they can to get those issues resolved. It is 21 minutes after the hour here on this Wednesday morning. We start the day under partly cloudy skies. It is 30 degrees in Clinton. More coming your way on the WHOW Morning Show.
New trucks and SUVs are coming here at Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton. This is Scott Baum. Yes, we have new inventory arriving, and you can see what will arrive right on our website. Just click on the pre-order and reserve tab. From there, you will find vehicles in transit and vehicles in production. Or just call our sales staff and we'll help. Find Silverados, Equinoxes, Blazers, including Tahoes and Suburbans, as well as our complete Buick line of SUVs. BaumChevyBuick.com, right from the start.
It is 21 minutes after the hour here on this Wednesday. Again, coverage of news is brought to you by Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton, your Silverado headquarters, and the WHOW Morning Show streams live to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Pekin Insurance, your Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. A former state senator has pled guilty in a federal embezzlement case 2 weeks after he abruptly resigned from the state legislature. Former state senator Thomas Cullerton, a Democrat from Villa Park, pled guilty to one count of embezzlement, admitting that he improperly took more than $240,000 from the Teamsters labor union. The 52-year-old has agreed to pay $248,828 in restitution and could face a prison sentence of more than a year, a prosecutor told U.S. District Judge Robert Gettleman during Tuesday's hearing. His sentencing has been set for June 21st. Cullerton was charged in a 2019 indictment. Prosecutors alleged that from 2013 to 2016, he collected $188,320 in salary, bonuses, and allowances from the Teamsters, $64,068 in health and pension contribution, and $21,678 in reimbursed medical bills while doing little or no work for the labor union. His trial has been scheduled for April, but Cullerton instead resigned from the office on February 23rd, hours before his attorney notified Gettleman that they had reached a plea deal with prosecutors. Cullerton was indicted in 2019, just days after former Teamsters boss John T. Coley pled guilty in an extortion case. Coley, who has not been sentenced, acknowledged arrangement for the job for Cullerton, despite doubts the employment was legitimate. Cullerton is part of a Chicago political family that dates back to the Great Fire of 1871 and is also a distant cousin of former Senate President John Cullerton, also a Chicago Democrat. March is Women's History Month, and an Illinois State University professor is looking back on history. Dr. Jenna Goldsmith, the Assistant Director of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies at ISU, says the month is a contemporary celebration to honor women around the globe.
For me, it feels pretty contemporary, and I think other people would feel the same way. Now, I see a lot of women's history stuff in the media. We see it on television. We, hear people talking about it. So I think that it's sort of ever evolving, much like any social movement or experience that we're having now. It's really important to understand the history of that work to understand how it's impacting fall.
To learn more about Women's History Month, Dr. Goldsmith recommends learning new facts and letting the women in your life know you support them. According to Dr. Goldsmith, one way to honor women is to contact local lawmakers about legislation that impacts women. The University of Illinois Extension is educating farmers about the carbon markets.
There's a lot of information out there. Everything's still really new. It's really confusing and still evolving. But I think a big question that's at the front of everyone's mind is how much will I be paid to participate? So we've seen that kind of evolving since things really took off last year. So I think that's a big question everybody's talking about. A lot of people are talking about land ownership and if I've already been doing the practice a lot of years and I'm not eligible to enroll, how is that fair? So a lot of discussion around that, land tenure, things like this. So really exciting time to be working in this field. That's Extension Sarah Sellers, who says an in-person program on the subject is being held in the Quad Cities. She says carbon market content is also being produced for the Farm Doc Daily websites. How might our nation's ag economy fare this year and long term as it continues to come out of what have some dubbed a reset due to COVID? Rod Bain has more.
Several analysts agree that agriculture and the ag economy has undergone a reset associated with the COVID-19 pandemic and its impacts. However,
has this reset that we've seen in agriculture resulted in a new and brighter picture for the industry, maybe even stronger than what might have been imagined several years ago? Or has this reset led to just a temporary brighter picture that will eventually fade and maybe resemble that of the previous decade?
Nathan Kaufman of the Federal Reserve in Kansas City offered his thoughts at this year's USDA Agricultural Outlook Forum. He believes for this year,
we may not see conditions in 22 be particularly concerning, and 2022, I would argue, appears to be a relatively strong year
due to an economic rebound from the contraction caused by the pandemic and strong positioning of farm businesses. Among the indicators that signal a potential positive economic outlook for ag this year,
one of the strongest increases that we've seen in many years, for example, in real GDP in 2021, following what we knew to be a decline in 2020. How households might be positioned to be able to continue to propel some of these gains in the broader economy. It does seem that households appear to be fairly well positioned. For the most part, labor markets are very strong. We're seeing wages rise at a pace that we haven't seen in quite some time. Consumer spending well exceeds the level that we had been prior to the pandemic.
Plus, households are saving as much as they did back in 2019.
Similar to households, farm businesses are also positioned relatively well. Working capital levels have largely been restored. Many producers are in a strong position to service the debt that they are using. Where they see opportunities for further advancement, land value sitting at record levels represents a positive picture.
Yet Kaufman acknowledges potential risk could unfold alongside broader economic conditions longer term.
First, despite strong economic growth in 2021, this broad activity does appear likely to slow somewhat in 2022 and 2023. Related is to recognize the role that government payments played in terms of propping up the ag sector and farm incomes in 2020. A third risk is inflationary pressures. The fourth risk, the potential for changes in interest rates, and this will be predicated very much on how inflationary pressures play out.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
We are 28 minutes after the hour here on this Wednesday morning. Again, we start the day under partly cloudy skies, 33 degrees in Clinton this morning. Coverage of news is brought to you by Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton, your Silverado headquarters, and the morning show streams live to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton.